Good morning, Professor. Thanks for watching my presentation. This is my presentation on the origin and impact of globalization in my country. I will be looking at the different aspects of globalization, such as economy, politics, and culture. I will also look at how the country I chose became such a major global player, the pros and cons of globalization, and how they have impacted the country. Also, I will look at how and why the multinational company I selected operates there. Let's get started. The country that I have selected is China. China is located in the region of East Asia and has a really unique history when it comes to globalization. Unlike a lot of other countries, it was never fully colonized, but foreign powers, especially Britain, had a huge influence. China was first united by King Yingxing in 221 BC. It was ruled by several parties such as the Mongols and the Ming Dynasty. Power shifted around China for many years and is currently being run by President Xi Jinping. So why was there foreign influence? A large conflict in China's history was the Opium Wars, where Britain forced China into trade agreements that were unfair. Places like Hong Kong became major trade hubs controlled by foreign powers. Because of this, China has lost a lot of economic and political control in that time period. But it also led to a nationalist movement that pushed for independence and self-sufficiency, such as the Boxer Rebellion. This history still affects China's approach to global trade today. So some of the reasons for the foreign influence were the trade and resources, like silk, tea, and cheap labor, and the coastal ports of Hong Kong. This helped the foreign powers gain a more dominant control in trade in Asia. So some of the impacts of that foreign influence was the rise of nationalism, and unequal treaties and economic disruption, which essentially forced China to take treaties so they weren't taken over that did not treat them fairly and led to their economy being sucked dry of all resources. So the three aspects of globalization. Globalization has completely transformed China. Economically, it has become the world's factory. It produces goods on a massive scale. China joined the WTO in 2001, which opened up even more opportunities for trade. Politically, China is now a major global power. It's a permanent and founding member of the UN Security Council and leads projects like the Belt and Road Initiative, which builds infrastructure in other countries. Culturally, China has spread its influence through technology. Think about how popular TikTok and Huawei are worldwide. Millions, hundreds of millions of users. But at the same time, China controls what foreign media its own people can access, which is a huge difference to how it exports its own culture through apps like TikTok. The pros and cons of globalization. So there are both good and bad sides to globalization for China. One of the pros is it helps China become the second largest economy in the whole world. Foreign investments that were allowed starting in 1986 because of the open door policy created jobs which lifted millions out of poverty and made China a global leader in technology. But it's not all great. There's a huge wealth gap currently between big cities like Shanghai and those in rural areas. Pollution is also a major issue, with China being one of the biggest contributors to global emissions. Also, China relies on exports a lot, so when global trade slows down, like during the US-China trade war, it can really hurt the economy. Other events, such as the COVID-19 pandemic, also had a major effect on China because imports in other countries were limited to stop the spread of the virus, and so that affected China greatly. So, some of the pros: economic growth and industrialization, job creation and poverty reduction. So some of the cons: income inequality, urban versus rural, and environmental damage. Multinational corporation in China. Apple is a great example of a multinational company that expanded into China. It saw a massive market with millions of potential customers. Plus, China has cheap skilled labor that helps Apple manufacture its products at scale for cheaper than it would in the US. But Apple has had some challenges. The Chinese government has strict rules on what foreign companies can do, especially when it comes to data and censorship. Apple also has faced fierce competition from Chinese brands like Huawei and Xiaomi. which offer cheaper alternatives. Those are like the Chinese versions of Android. Despite that, China remains one of Apple's biggest markets, and its supply chain depends heavily on Chinese factories. International institution. China is very involved in multiple international institutions, two of them being the World Trade Organization and the United Nations. China joined the WTO in 2001, which helped China expand its exports, but it also led to trade disputes, especially with the US, over tariffs and intellectual property. China is also a big player in the UN, where it has veto power as a Security Council member. It's involved in global peacekeeping and climate agreements, which has helped strengthen its influence worldwide. China was actually one of the founding nations in the United Nations. Trade Bloc, RCEP. The RCEP, which is the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, is the largest trade agreement in the world, and China, as well as many of its top trade partners like Japan and South Korea, are members. This agreement reduces tariffs and makes trade easier between countries. For China, this creates stronger ties with its neighbors and less dependencies on Western trade deals. So what is RCEP? It is the largest trading bloc in the world, and it includes 15 countries, which are shown on the image on the right. So the RCEP was created in 2012, and this has benefited China greatly. It has allowed China to gain more dominance over the Asia markets. So, trade partners and exchange rate impacts. China's top 3 trade partners are the United States, Hong Kong, and Japan. So some of the major exported goods are electrical machinery and equipment, items like smartphones, computers, and circuits. Also, industrial machinery such as manufacturing equipment and mechanical appliances such as washing machines, and furniture and bedding, a variety of home and office furniture products. If you take a look around your office, a lot of it is probably made in China. Major import goods. So this is what they take into their country and what they most likely don't have a lot of in their country. So electrical machinery and equipment. So components and devices essential for the various industries, such as chips for the phones and computers, mineral fuels and oils, crude oil and natural gas to meet energy demands. Their population is absolutely massive, so they need a lot of energy to keep that operating. So ores and precious metals, so raw materials like iron ore and copper for manufacturing. So exchange rate movements significantly influence China's trade dynamics with their partners. So an example of this would be the US. So regarding the United States, a stronger Chinese yuan, which is their currency, makes Chinese exports more expensive in the US. And so this could have a potential to reduce demand while making US goods cheaper for Chinese importers. So the exchange rate fluctuations can affect the price, demand, and profitability of traded goods between China and its major partners. Conclusion. So in conclusion, China's globalization journey has made it one of the most powerful economies in the world. It has seen massive economic growth, but also struggles with challenges like environmental damage and income inequality. China is currently the number 1 exporter in the world and number 2 importer in the world. A fun fact is that China's Great Wall is over 13,000 miles long and is one of the new 7 wonders of the world. I selected this country because it is amazing how far they have come because of globalization, and it is the second most populous country in the world with a population of 1.4 billion citizens. To put that into perspective, the US only has about 365 million. So they almost have 3 to 4 times the population. So thank you for listening to my presentation and have a great rest of your day. The references are on the next 2 slides, and as you can see, there are references on the bottom right side of the screen or bottom right left side of the slide. Also, in some of the speaker notes, there are references. So all the information that I've used has been referenced correctly, and here's a list. Thank you and have a great rest of your day.